We've been looking at the fruits of the Spirit. Better by the bushel, I've called this series. Last week we talked about love. This week we're going to talk about joy. Now, this parable has been called by many theologians the perfect parable. It's been called the perfect parable because it's very clear. It has a what you're supposed to do and a what you're not supposed to do. What the wise man does and what the foolish man does. There's not a lot of gray area in this parable, which makes it good for me because I'm not very smart. So we're going to look at this parable and see how it might help us understand how to have joy in life. The interesting thing about this parable is both of the situations are exactly the same. Whether it's the wise man or the foolish man, the exact same premise is set, the exact same things happen. In both cases, the storms come. Whether the man is wise or foolish, the storms come. Whether you're prepared or not, the storms come. Whether you live on the west coast of Florida or the east coast of Florida, the storms are gonna come. We lucked out this last time, maybe not so much next time. What Jesus is trying to tell us is a unique and universal truth. Pain is inevitable. If you are a human being and you live on this earth, you will experience pain, no matter how much you prepare. In every life, storms are going to come. They're going to happen. No matter how much you try to protect yourself from them, they're still going to happen. We all experience pain. We Americans are wonderful at trying to avoid pain. If you've been to the pharmacy recently, you'll understand this because there's usually about an aisle and a half of nothing but pain relievers. We got aspirin, we got Tylenol, we got Aleve, we got ibuprofen, we got just about everything you can think of. Make sure you buy the off-brand names. They're much less expensive. There was a commercial on TV a few years back. It said, if you were on a deserted island, which headache medication would you want to have with you? And my response was always, if I was on a deserted island, I wouldn't need headache medication. I could lay around in the sun all day and get a tan. Also, look at the drug problems that we have in our country. People abuse illicit drugs and even prescription drugs. Most professionals will tell you that the reason that they do is to escape the pain of their existence. Pain is inevitable. We can't ultimately avoid pain. It catches up with us. Even Novocaine and lidocaine doesn't kill pain, it just postpones it. Last year I had a little cyst on my back that had to be taken out. I went to the local little medical clinic place, and the nurse practitioner said, oh yes, we can take that out of there for you. And she gave me a lidocaine shot, and usually you wait around for 4, 5, maybe 7, 8 minutes until the lidocaine takes effect. She gave me the shot and cut right in with the scalpel. Now, when they tell you that scalpels are so sharp you can't feel it, they're lying to you. I have never felt so much pain in my entire life. We try to avoid pain, but we don't have that luxury. It eventually catches up with us because pain is inevitable. Just like in both cases, the storms come, in both cases in this parable that Jesus tells, they hear his words. He says, whoever hears these words of mine and acts on them is like the wise man. He also says, whoever hears these words and does not act, the hearing is not the problem. Hearing Jesus' words does very little for you. You can sit in here every Sunday and hear every sermon all year long, and it really does you no good. That wasn't a very good commercial for our church, was it? It's not about the hearing of the words. Because in both cases, with the wise man and the foolish man, they hear his words. The difference is in the choice to act or not act. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to tell you that you have to earn your salvation, because you don't. If you've accepted Jesus into your life, you're saved. You're going to heaven. I'm not talking about getting to heaven today. I'm talking about experiencing joy. If you want to experience joy in your life, you have to act on Jesus' words, he tells us. In both of these situations, the foundation of the house depends on their choice. They both hear Jesus' word, and then they go out and choose a foundation for their life. One makes a wise choice, the other makes a foolish choice. And ultimately, neither of them can blame God for the storms. Neither of them can blame God for the consequences of their choices. You see, pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. Pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. We have the choice of how we respond in those difficult situations we face. We cannot avoid pain, but we can avoid joy. Now, don't confuse happiness with joy. Joy and happiness are very different things. Happiness, by the very form of the word, depends on what's happening. If all kinds of good things are happening to you, you are happy. When the good things stop happening, we stop being happy. But the amazing thing about joy is independent of the circumstances. Sometimes we experience joy best in difficult situations. When circumstances get difficult, joy is increased if we're doing it right. And sometimes joy is even at its best in suffering. Joy is a lightness of being as a result of God's presence in your life. Joy is something that we have to choose and act upon. Joy is free, but it's not cheap. It costs us pain and suffering. A wise man once said, "Our cup of joy is only as deep as our cup of sorrows." Joy has to do not with what we experience, but with how we experience it. Pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. The third thing that happens in this parable that Jesus tells is that their circumstances at the end of the storm depend on their actions. Their circumstances depend on their actions. The house stood or fell not because of what God did, but because of what they did, the choices that they made for their foundation of their life. God is not responsible for the results of our actions. I did youth ministry for about 20 years, and I was famous for saying to my kids, God will forgive you for any sin that you commit. Rarely does he remove you from the consequences of that sin. The results are on us because of our actions or our inactions. If you look at that passage from Galatians 5 that talks about the fruit of the Spirit, it says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, and it goes on. I think the amazing thing is that love, joy, and peace are right next to each other. We're going to talk about peace next week, but if you want to have love and peace in your life, the thing that holds them together is the joy. Not only do we need to hear God's word, but we need to act on it. In that John passage, Jesus says, "If you obey my commands, you'll remain in my love, just as I've obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete." Ladies and gentlemen, obedience is a joy builder. If you want to experience joy in your life, Be obedient to God's commands. Do what he asks you to. Again, not because you'll get to heaven, because we Presbyterians are real big on the grace thing. You can't earn your way to heaven, but you can do your way to joy. You'll experience it by following his commands. You know, when we have kids, we don't tell them not to run out in the street because we want to be really mean, rotten parents. We tell them not to run out in the street because we don't want them to get hit by a car. We want their life to be more joyous. We give them rules to keep them in line so that they won't hurt themselves or damage their lives. It's the same thing with God's commands for us. When we follow God's commands, we live more joyous lives. I've been trying to tell you about these fruits of the Spirit thing, that you can't go out and try to be a more loving person or be a more joyous person. The way to experience more love in life is to focus on your relationship with God and to love others, and you'll be loved in return. The way to experience more joy in your life is to focus on your relationship with God and serve others, and you'll experience much more joy. If you find yourself in a bad mood, if you're in a cranky way, if you're kind of depressed and things aren't going your way, the way to get over it is not to sit in your room and go, God doesn't like me. The way to get over it is to find some place to serve. If you're feeling bummed out, go visit somebody in the hospital and pray for them. Bring them some flowers and watch them smile. That will bring you joy. If you're feeling like you're not in a very happy mood, come into the office and do some work around there and find the joy that we have in that place. If you're finding yourself in a bad mood, come work in the clothes closet or come put together the meals for the backpacks that we hand out to the kids on Fridays. This is a way to build joy in your life. Because Christ said, love one another. This is my command to you, that your joy may be complete. You see, Jesus is knocking at the door with opportunities for service, but we can't decide whether or not we should answer the door. We need to look through the peephole and see what the opportunities are out there for us. And get involved, and you'll start experiencing that joy. You see, pain is inevitable. And misery, however, is optional. We get to choose how we respond to these difficult situations. My hope for you this day is that when the difficult circumstances, the storms come in your life, because I know you've heard Jesus' words, that you'll choose joy. Because I can get up here and I can preach all the really nice sermons that you've ever heard. I can talk about Jesus and puppy dogs, and you'll just feel so wonderful until you get in your car and get about a half mile down Spring Hill Drive, and somebody will cut you off and you won't be quite so joyful anymore. It's not about hearing, it's about doing. Ladies and gentlemen, choose joy.